Welcome to the UKOCR Community Podcast, presented by Obstacle Racing Media. Each episode, we'll be talking to race directors, elite runners, weekend warriors, and frankly, anyone else from the UKOCR scene that will talk to us. Here is your host, Alan, aka Muddy Duck.
Anywhere in Chicken Town. The bloody scene is bloody sad. The bloody news is bloody bad.
For today's podcast, we have teamed up with True Sapien. True, what did I hear you say? True Sapien, as in Homo sapien, just like us. Now, True Sapien are a community of everyday athletes. They engage in OCR, running, triathlon, biking, anything that's outdoor adventure. These are people with a desire to reject mediocrity, I can never say that word, and push their boundaries and pursue their potential by engaging in challenging physical activities. The ordinary people unleash their extraordinary. Now, the True Sapien movement was created to provide inspiration, motivation and knowledge to help them on their journey. How do you get involved? Well, the best way is by downloading their recently released app. It gives a great insight into what it's about. It's like a social media platform in its own right, a place to gain and share knowledge, advice and ideas. The app is also a great way to keep in touch with other True Sapiens, what they are doing, and let them know what you're up to. I particularly like the daily motivational quote notifications, as you've seen, because we share these quite a lot. Not your usual soft soaping rubbish, but more original, straight talking quotes that really do strike a chord, especially with me. There are challenges on there, which, although few in quantity at present, are due to expand rapidly in the coming weeks. Alternatively, head to their website or follow them on their various social media platforms, which will certainly give a flavour to what they're all about. Now, as we say, go to your iOS or Android system, go to your App Store and search for True Sapien and download it today. So that was a little advert there from our partners, which if you've probably noticed and you listen to all of our UKOCR podcasts and our fitness racing podcasts, you will probably see that we are partnering more and more often with people. If you want to be a partner, hit us up. You never know. We have quite a lot of people out there that listen to us. I take fun of it and say there's only 13, but no, there isn't. There's a lot more than that. But if you want to hit us up, you want to become a partner on our podcast, then just get in touch. admin@ukocr.com, and then you speak to me, Alan. What have we got for you this week? This week I've got the race across Panama. Yep, we speak to two guys, Oliver and Dan, who ran the full length of Panama, which is a rat race event. Rat race was done lots of bucket lists, and this is one of them. We're going to find out what it was like. It's quite expensive, so don't think it's going to be cheap if you fancy doing it. But it is a bucket list event, and there's more and more bucket list events out there. Quite recently, I just did one of my bucket lists, so I ticked off my 50-miler ultra. So that was my first 50-miler, and I've got an 100-miler coming up. Maybe one day I might go out to something like Rat Races event like this, Race Across Panama. I don't know if it's me. I'm getting a little bit old. What have you been up to? What's on your bucket list? Message me. Let me know what's on your bucket list. What is something that you've always wanted to do that you've not had a chance to do? And maybe I'll get you one. Maybe we'll chat about it. But I will always answer you back anyway. So yeah, hit me up. You can email me, admin@ukocr.com, or you can just drop me a message on Instagram, Facebook. Most people even know my telephone number now, so I get more WhatsApp messages. So if you know it, you know it. If you don't, ask someone will give it to you. It doesn't bother me. Anyway, let's get on with this podcast. We're almost 4 minutes into it, and we haven't started it yet. So here we go. It's me, Oliver, Dan, and we are all talking about the race across Panama. Gentlemen, how are you? What day are we on? We are on a Wednesday, so 2 weeks before this goes out. How are you doing?
Very well. I'm doing very well. Anyway, how are you?
I'm very good, Dan. Dan Hiscock, back from what we're going to be talking about soon, which is the Panama Coast to Coast. And my other guest is Oliver. Ollie, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. I'm good. My legs are back in the land of the living, finally.
I couldn't wait. You know, I've seen this on Rat Race. People know, listen to my podcast. You know, I love Rat Race events. I'm not keen on their bivy bags, but I love their events. So I was keen the moment I saw it on your Instagram, Ollie, and like it came to me, and I was like, oh, I need to get on this. I need to jump on this with someone who's done it. But before we go into it, let's talk about you two, about what you've done in before. So I know you, Ollie, you're heavily involved in OCR. You've done quite a lot of ultra runs and things like that. So give us a little bit of background sort of on yourself.
I sort of got in, as a lot of people do, to OCR with a group of friends, tried it, loved it, got the bug immediately, and then just whether it's something in my psyche or whatever, just wanted to take the route that a lot of people do, which is just find that next challenge, find that next one up. It's that natural progression of, your first trifecta, and then moving on to ultras, and then moving on to ultras in mountains, and finding more and more events that help you actually find what your limits are, and help you discover where your comfort zone is or isn't.
What was your limit before Panama?
I'd like to say world's toughest mudder, but I was a little bit injured going into world's toughest mudder, so I'm going to have to say I think that the hardest race I've ever faced that has made me think, damn, this is hard, was probably the Spartan Ultra World Championships in Sweden, because it was -12. You're running up a snow-filled ski slope, full of obstacles, every lap. So you're literally just going up and down a ski slope. So every 5 miles, you've got to hit it and come back down. And it was hard going. It was cold, and that's one of those races that you can, and this will actually tie a lot into Panama, and why I wanted to do Panama is what I found with some of these events, like World's Toughest Mudder and that particular Spartan race, is when you have the opportunity of laps, there is that opportunity to wave the white flag, to tap out, and that's what I kind of loved initially about when I did my first beast. It's you hit, and I hope some people can relate to what I'm saying here. You hit that sort of halfway point and you think, oh, I can't go anymore. But the quickest way back is forward.
Yeah.
So you have to go through it. And then when you get to the finish line, like I think Spartan says, you'll know at the finish line, you're like, okay, I could do it and I can do it. And I think that's one thing that takes a lot of mental strength with the lapped events, where, you can fight those demons that are trying to get you to quit going around the course, but every lap you're given that option to tap out, and it's a case of will you or won't you. Whereas, you go through something like Panama coast to coast, once you're in that jungle, you're in that jungle. And there's no tapping out.
I like that one way out. I'm going to come back to that thought in a bit about lapped events. Dan, what about you? What's your background in running ultras? Because I'm going to be honest here now. Now, we have researchers, and I've got loads of paid stuff on Ollie. But I've gone onto your Instagram, and you're private. You don't let no one look at your Instagram.
Yeah, I'm an old fogey in terms of social media. You can tell Ollie lives and breathes it. The amount of thinking he does it. But well, I know my background, but it's not impressive by any means. I only started going to the gym in 2014. I remember November 2014, and I sat in the car park for half an hour before I worked up the courage to actually go in. And I only did that because I'd signed up to a Tough Mudder in 2015. So that was the beginning of my fitness journey, from the start, just working towards that. I had a couple of years of just doing Tough Mudders every summer. And then we started going to Cliff Lakes, because Cliff Lakes is a 5-minute walk just over there. From my house. So I don't know if you've spoken to those guys in the past and all of that, and just next to Griff and Tress's place now. So yeah, that kind of gradually built up my love for OCR, just kind of as an enthusiast, just a hobbyist. I'm not competitive really. And yeah, it kind of grew. People would say, "Oh, have you tried a Spartan?" So I tried a Spartan, and all the other Total Warrior, Ramrun at the time, and just tried everything that everyone was doing, but not competitively. And then my background, like what brought me onto kind of Panama, I guess, was like a mini life crisis, I guess I would call it, and I just wanted to do something completely different. I wasn't necessarily looking for just the next physical challenge like Oli has described. I was just looking for something that was out there. And I can't remember how it came to pass that I saw Rat Race's bucket list had just started. He had 3 events on there: the Mongol 100, Race to the Wreck in Namibia, and Panama. And just the greenness and like vitality and depth of the thumbnail of that Panama just gripped me. So that's all there is to it, really. A bit of a whim.
Had you done any ultras before this? Had you?
So yeah, no, all of my kind of extreme training, all of my like long distance training was for Panama. And I signed up to that just to give a bit of context because it goes way back. And I've only just done it, but I actually booked that in 2019. I was supposed to do it in 2020, but then, you know, we all know what happens next. COVID happened. It was postponed for 2 years. And then I was supposed to go and do it in 2022, but then got a little message from Oli going, "Oh, I've got some Rat Race credit. Do you fancy doing Panama together?" So that ended up being what we did. So yeah, I have done a couple of ultras since as training for this. I'm not fast, but I like to think of myself as a completionist. So just get it done.
What ultras had you done before?
I don't know if you know the company called Run Walk Crawl.
Yeah.
In Wales, so they did one called the SW50, and then the Brecon to Cardiff ultra, and then I've done a couple of long distance Tough Mudders, you know, the Infinity, so 45k on that, and then Europe's Toughest Mudder as well. I think I did 35 miles on that when it was measured in miles.
I like that, back when it was measured in miles.
Yeah.
So did you do the last Europe's Toughest Mudder down in
no, I've only done
the Midlands? Yeah.
Only done one. I've only done one. It was at Beaver Castle. Can't remember the year. It must have been 2019, the year I booked.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome, guys. So you just touched on I'm coming back to you on here. You touched about lapped events and things like that. You know, you said it was like very much a mindset of like when you come back to the start on lapped event. But Panama, I mean, we're talking the mindset to go into Panama with the heat, the jungle, all of that. Wasn't you frightened of that part?
Very much so. I mean, Dan left out a very slight but important detail when he said about we spoke to each other, because I ended up with Rat Race credit, and I can't remember how I ended up. I think I might have, because me and Dan know each other through both being Cliff Lakes when it was, you know, sort of fully living and breathing and had its own space. It's a slightly while it's all still in our hearts, it's not quite. Obviously, it's we're basically in different teams now. So he's in Obstacle Gym and I'm in Rumble, but we still are in the Cliff Lakes chat. And so it came up there and about this Rat Race credit, and I think I said that I was thinking of doing Dominican tip to toe because it looked like a cool location. It specifically says in its itinerary that there's no poisonous animals and you get to sleep in hotels every night. And I thought that sounds great. And so, but he said, well, I'm doing Panama. And I was like, okay, well, it would be cool to do an event with somebody I know. So I just went, why not? And I didn't really read Panama. I didn't read the fact that it was the hardest event on the list. I didn't read the fact that we're going to be sleeping in the jungle rather than in hotels. I kind of just thought, yeah, let's just do it. And it was only nearer the time when I actually started looking into it, I actually realized that what was involved, you know, how many days it was, how many miles it was, you know, the fact that, you know, we are going to be, you know, sleeping in the wild, what animals and stuff that we're going to be up against. And I went pretty much, I only really thought about it in the few weeks after World's Toughest Mudder, where Rat Race had organised like a bushwhacker weekend.
Yeah.
And that was with De Beers Wolf, which is a really, really good guy, Luke, fantastic guy. And he supported us all the way through the event with advice. But it was there, he sat us down and was like, right, this is a scorpion, this is a snake, this is a butterfly. These are loads of the different spiders. This is jungle rot. And then that's there when you start to get that sinking feeling like, thanks, Dan. And then, but to be honest, I started to lose my mojo a little bit with some of the racing that I'd been doing. It's probably since about towards the end of COVID, I'd started to not lose the love, but lose a little bit of the fight that I think you need to have for some of the harder events. And I think that's really important to have, that if you're going to do the more extreme events, whether it's distance, whether it's difficulty, whether it's discomfort, like, those who've done Tough Guy, or still remember Tough Guy, know what's involved in that, the cold water, the electrocution, etc. The nettles, if everyone's done Nettle Warrior, I haven't done that one, but it looks hardcore. You have to be up for it. You have to be up for being punished. And that's the thing. If you go into a 24-hour race that's multi-lapped and you're not up for being punished that day, it very quickly becomes tempting to take an early bath. And I knew that I'd lost that a little bit because in World's Toughest Mudder, I did 50 miles and my leg was a bit injured and it was cold. And I was like, well, I could just walk it out for another 12 hours and potentially get the 75. All the excuses were coming in. And basically, I tapped out 50 miles and never gave myself the opportunity to discover if I had a full 24 hours in me, if I had a full, if I could have just, gone through that suffering. So for me, that's why I said it wasn't as hard as it could be. There were people who were still out in that course after 24 hours that, and hats off to them. So I kind of went away knowing, okay, great, I've got the 24-hour, I've got the World's Toughest Mud headband. I've kind of done the hardest race, but I felt it was something lacking. And so knowing that I was going to go into a challenge like Panama, where there's only one way through it, really, I was scared, but I was also really excited to put myself in an unescapable situation.
Wow. What was you like, Dan, when they told you about? Did you know all about the snakes and the spiders when you researched it?
I found out a lot after Oli.
A lot after him.
Yeah, because I didn't do the bushwhacker thing, and I didn't even join the group chat until about a month before. So no, they don't advertise the bugs and the creepy crawlies, really. All I saw was, you get from one end of the country to the other, and that seemed like a good enough achievement for me.
That is a pretty good achievement. I've got to say, 100 miles plus the kayak. Well, it's not kayaking, is it? It's packcraft on top of it. But it must have been a little bit. For me, it would have been so scary. I mean, animals are my worst nightmare. I get frightened of running past cows when I go through farmers' fields. So animals are my biggest nightmare of whatever kind they are. Did you know about the camping in the jungle as well, Dan, or was that new to you as well?
No, I was all for that. Like, I think probably somewhere deep down, my inner Bear Grylls was like raring to come out and get involved in the bushcraft and the camping and all of that. So I was ready for all that. And I didn't really pay much attention to the possibility that there'd be things in there that I wouldn't like. I'm not really that squeamish. So, if there's all the things we did encounter, I weren't really bothered by, apart from on one night when I definitely heard a snake going underneath my hammock. I was fine with all of those things.
Oh, that would have been done for me. Where's the 4x4? I'm going home.
Yeah, well, that was after the first night in the jungle, and we just had our evening chat, and Jim had said, "This is your opportunity to think about: do you want to go ahead or do you want to reverse out of the jungle? But this is your last chance, and we'll come and ask you in the morning, and you can tell us." And I was like, "Absolutely not! I'm carrying on." But after that, it kind of shook me a little bit, just hearing that at 2 o'clock in the morning. It was unmistakably a snake, because I don't know any other creature that drags itself along the floor through the brush. And it sounded about the size of an arm. So yeah, all the kind of emotions and the processing happened all in a flash there. And for, a split second, I did wonder if I would not carry on in the morning, but short-lived, fortunately.
No, I'm a kit person. What was the kit list like? I'll go to you, Dan, while I'm still with you. When you got the kit list, was it quite long? Was it quite short?
Yeah, extensive. It was huge. It printed it off over, I think, 14 pages. everything under the sun. And that was just to be prepared. And then I don't know if you want to go through it item by item, but you've got your.
Give me some of the random things on there that you maybe wouldn't have expected any other OCR.
Random things. Well, a hammock and tarp is I've never had to carry on a run before. So, yeah, obviously that. Water filtration equipment, something that you must have. So a water filter and several kind of bags and tubes and bits and pieces that go with that. What was that pesticide stuff we had to spray everything? Permethrin, yeah, permethrin. You had to coat everything in that, which I'd never heard of before.
What is permethrin? It's
like it's a pesticide. Basically, it soaks into your clothes and fabrics of the hammocks and stuff. And when something like a tick lands on it and tries to chew you through it, it gets poisoned and drops off. So it's like if the DEET didn't work, that's the next line of defense kind of thing.
Right.
And then more standard bits and pieces: bivy bag, compass, a mirror. I had to purchase a little signaling mirror. All that kind of stuff if you get trapped or lost out there. So that kind of stuff. I think that's all that's come into my mind in terms of odd things. Oli probably might be a bit more of a tap on that because you were less of a camper before that.
Yeah, I was terrible. I was terrible. And that was one of the fears for me as well. That was one of the big comfort zone things for myself because, I know where I am with fitness. I've done it for years. It's my job as well. But all these knots, bow lines, larch hitches, Siberian hitch knots, it was all just completely new. And Dan knows because I met up with him a couple of times to practice kit. It was an absolute fail from me every time. Dan's there with all his tarp and hammock up, really nice, taking photos with his dog, perfect shots. And I'm just like looking at all this stuff on the ground, like literally all the gear, no idea. I don't even think I managed to like get my gas fire, my alcohol fire going that day either, did I? It was just.
No. So I think that was. You did have to rush off.
Yeah, I think that was one of the fears for me, knowing that it wasn't just about the risk of what's in the jungle. It was the fact that there was a high chance I was going to end up landing on something when my hammock doesn't last the night. But yeah, so it was a lot of learning. It was a lot of learning knots and a lot of upskilling on things that were completely new concepts to me.
Did either of you do any training runs fully kitted up? So, give an example is like I've got a 60 miler coming up very shortly, and I've also got 100. So I'm actually running now with my full kit. So I know that I've got to run for 12 hours with no aid station. So I'm running with like 6 litres of water now, training, maybe not as bad as you guys are, but I've got the full kit in the back of the rucksack and things like that. Did you do any training runs like that, or was it just, did you wing it when you got there?
Who wants to go first?
Go on, Dan, you go first, you're on.
All right then. Well, I took the full itinerary and mileage from the previous year, and I did it all about a month before in order as it was set out. So I did 2 marathons, and then I put my full kit on and did some walking in Wales and Shropshire and hiked the full distance because I needed to get it into my head, because I know that's not the way you should do it. Everyone says you don't train the distance that you're running for, but I needed to get it into my head that I could actually do that distance, wake up the next day and run again, or wake up the next day and walk again, because I hadn't done any multi-day stuff before. So that was really important to me, was just to make sure I could. So yeah, I trained the whole distance. And then for the kayaking part, indoor rowing was as close as I could get. So I did a few big rows.
What about you, Oli? Did you do some training specific?
I trained, but I didn't do any kit stuff. Like I was unfortunately in a car accident just before Christmas. And I sort of got the settlement sorted only about 3 or 4 weeks. So they took the hire car off me, and basically I was like, right, okay, I haven't got a car, but I'm actually going to use this to force me to just do weighted walks. So literally I just got a Go Ruck rucksack that was a plate carrying one, started off with 10 kg and just just increased the weight week on week, and just tried to walk everywhere I could with this rucksack. Other than that, just a little bit of leg training, but I didn't do anywhere near what Dan did, which was, Dan really sort of got his head round the multi-day side of thing. So I was only walking for about 40 minutes, 2 hours at a time. You were out for hours, weren't you?
Like I said, I just did as close to the itinerary of the event as possible. But as I said to you, when we were doing our camping gear, you're a professional at this, and you're always fit. And I've always seen you do big things like fan dance and world's toughest and all of that stuff. So I didn't think you obviously knew you could do it, or at least deep down somewhere you knew you could do it. Well, I know that because you didn't even read the manual until like 2 weeks before. So
that just means I'm an idiot.
You're confident in your own abilities, and so you should be, because you've done it.
What I'm getting, Dan, is that you actually looked a little bit deeper into it and thought, yes, right, this is what I've got to do it. Where Oli decided a bit of a wing and a prayer, and he was going to get there with his fitness rather than anything else. Is that right?
The only thing that I knew that had to be done outside of the physical side of it was break those boots in. That was the clear message that was coming through, because you've got to have these specific jungle boots that have got these little holes in. So when you go through water, it basically sprays the water that you've collected out the side to sort of try and keep your feet as dry can be. And that was the thing. It's do not take fresh jungle boots, that you've only got off Amazon or whatever, into, a multi-day, 200-kilometer event. I know you're not 200 kilometers in the jungle, but 10-hour everyday marching event. So that was the key thing for me, just in regards to the training, get used to a weighted rucksack, because I remember from fan dance that one of the most difficult things about fan dance was actually just the weight on your shoulders rather than the weight on your legs. So get used to having something on your back and make sure those shoes are broken in. Those are sort of just two principles that I was working with.
So you didn't. I mean, I didn't realise you had to have special boots. I thought you'd be going in trainers. I've written down and wondered what trainers they'd do it in, but it was more jungle boots than running shoes.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, the first 2 days is road running on a marathon. So you do a marathon on day one. So most people have got, your standard road running trainers, and on day two. And then we were six days in the jungle, really, or 5.5 days in the jungle. So that was jungle boots. Again, that was, I didn't even know what jungle boots were. Don't know if you did, Dan. And then just, what did you have for the Packcraft section? I just had some of them water shoes.
Put my trainers. Oh no, yeah, I had water shoes as well. That's right. Yeah,
which I'd never heard of water shoes as well. But we were in a group chat, and it was a really, really supportive group, and everyone just helped each other with kit, and that was one of the best things about it, really, isn't it? That everyone was just so dead on with each other.
Yeah, it was easy to become a bit overwhelmed with information, but I had to give you one. But yeah, I'll add to jungle boots. We had to buy snake-proof gaiters. There's another odd thing for your pack that you probably wouldn't otherwise pack for a race.
You've got all this kit now in the UK that you're not going to have to use. You've got to go back into the other ones.
It's probably part of their strategy to get repeat business. Well, you've got all the kit. Come and do another one of the expeditions.
Yeah, that's a great marketing tool.
Yeah.
Let's go on to the race then. So you just talked there, day one, marathon, road marathon. How hot was it?
Unbelievable.
Yeah, extremely.
I've never run in heat like that before.
Yeah, I think did it peak at like 38 degrees on day one?
I don't know, man. It was just ridiculously hot. You start off and we start off, I think 7:30, I think was the start time on day one.
6:45.
6:45. Yeah, that's right. Well, I was probably there at 7:30 with my late ass, but yeah, we started jogging, and it was all grey and it's all shady. and then it sort of gets a little bit warmer, and you're like, and then as the sun comes up, the shadows of the trees are sort of like disappearing off a little bit.
Yeah.
And then it was quite open at that stage as well, because it was very flat on day one, a lot of sort of farmers' fields. So it's extremely open. But by 11 o'clock, it was just like heat I've never experienced before, or certainly that I've never ever considered any sort of long distance run before. It was ridiculous. I mean, you know, if you know heart rates, for anyone listening who trains to heart rate, my normal sort of easy, long, slow run type heart rate pace would be around 140 to 150. But once that sun was up, even running slow, you know, 6:30 to 7-minute kilometers, you know, it was up at 170.
Wow.
Yeah, can attest. Yeah, agreed.
And it was just, you know, you couldn't run it. I mean, you probably could if you were acclimatized to it and you'd spent a good bit of time out there. But, you know, we'd sort of flown into Panama City, been there a couple of days, then flown to David, which is another sort of major city, and then driven out to Los Alos, which is, you know, where the south coast for the start line is. And then that's it, you're off. So, yeah, how did you find the heat, Dan? Loved it.
Well, no, I did love it. In retrospect, I think more than at the time. I can't really add much more to what Ollie's saying, other than on day one, I think I got through 9 liters of water, to give you an idea of how much sweat you're replacing. Filled my 3-liter Camelback up every time we hit a checkpoint, and there were 3 checkpoints. So and I had 2 smaller half-liter squishy bottles on my chest as well. So yeah, it was hot.
When you were doing it, did you run as a big group, or was the people racing it? It was like proper racing it, or did
Ollie was the closest thing to a racer, I think, that there was. You were at the front. You were at the front for the first 2 days. Well, you had to catch up, because didn't you forget something in the hotel room?
Well, and I forget something all the time. Well, I sort of improved on that as the time went on. But no, I was concerned that I'd left my jungle boots in the hotel. But actually, Andrea got hot spots on her feet. Again, that was like, as a runner, maybe I should know. Maybe I don't know. I don't know if anyone else does. But hot spots, apparently, like the early signs of blisters. Yeah. It's not something I ever really have trouble with. But you know, we were told that, you know, in the heat, as things expand and things start rubbing very quickly in this hot environment, formation of blisters is going to happen at a much quicker rate. And Andrea was feeling hot spots very quickly, so I just helped her, get hold the tape and get her feet zinc oxided, and then I sort of tried to catch up. But yeah, hydration and making those salt sticks, that was the game changer. Having those salt tablets.
Yeah, so going back to the grouping, Alan, when we started, we kind of early on split into kind of a forward 6. It was 7, and then like Ollie just described, he went back and helped Andrea. And for the first 10K, we were kind of a close group of 6. Yeah. And then kind of about when Ollie described the sun started getting really hot and it got very open, I definitely started to drop off, and Ollie passed me. So it became a 5, then it became a 6 again, replacing me for Ollie. And then, judging by the look of the trackers, it split off into a 3 and a 3 and a 3 at the front. You, Sarah, and Lawrence, right?
Yeah.
And then
I think Dave started to get, because Dave was at the front for 8 years.
Dave, yeah.
And then his blisters started.
He was a machine, and you wouldn't think ultra runner or anything to look at him. I don't even think he'd done that distance before, but he just was so constant. And
he's a cyclist. He's an absolute machine on the gravel bike. Yeah. He'd knocked out all those Mongol 100s and can't remember I think he did the Scotland one as well, because that's where he's from, wasn't he? So I think he's just got that real good engine.
Yeah.
But then his feet got the feet got to him, and he had to back because of feet issues, I think.
Yeah. But that's true. I forgot he was in front for most of the first day. And then from what I can gather from anecdotes since, it kind of was like people in 1s and 2s There were 13 of us in total, just for context. So people were in ones and twos. I hung out with Bryony for the second quarter, and then we kind of grouped into a 5 with Vicky and Trevor for basically, and Dean for basically the rest of it. So it were kind of fluid groups, I would say, both 2s, 3s, 4s.
With there only being 13 people, I bet you made some. I mean, you said that in the group chat you were making good relationships and building good relationships. I bet actually on the course with only 13 people, you've made friends for life.
Absolutely, yeah. Without getting too mushy, yeah, definitely made some friends for life.
Yeah, we were kind of a bit spread out on the marathon days because obviously everyone's going at their own different paces and running speeds and feeling the heat at different times or choosing to stop at pit stops for longer or shorter times. But once we got into the jungle, it was a completely different story. We were together as a unit from. I mean, we were a little bit sporadic on day 1, but literally from the start of day 2 all the way to the end of the jungle phase, we were a unit.
Yeah, we're all together, and there was some socializing time before and afterwards as well. We got to know each other, and made some really strong relationships, and people I hope to know forever. Really.
What was your times like on that first marathon? I'll go to you first, Dan. What was your time on the first marathon?
I think it was something like 9 hours 20 or something in that order. It was the slowest marathon I've ever run.
There's a reason behind that with that heat.
Yeah, exactly. I by about a factor of 2. I think it was twice as slow as the next fastest marathon. But heat and the hills started to kick in towards the last quarter of that. But definitely the heat was the main opponent.
What about you, Ollie? What was your time?
I think I did just under 8 hours on day 1, and then just under 7 hours on day 2, which is all right because we had a lot more elevation on day 2 as well. But the tactic with day 2 was I was a bit more ready for how hot it was going to be, and I knew 11 o'clock is when you're going to be forced to walk a lot more. So I tried to be a little bit faster in the cooler hours on day 2 to sort of try and get a head start on that. But also, fortunately, with day 2, it was a lot more enclosed, so there was a lot more trees over the path. So you're kind of coming up with tactics like, I'm gonna walk the sun and run the shade, and sort of little tactics like that. So every time bit of shade, run that as soon as it's sun. So a little bit like walking the hills in your standard trail run or whatever. It's walk the sun and run the shade.
Yeah, probably.
These first 2 days being, you said they're more road and very open. Was there a lot of indigenous people there from Panama?
Well, obviously, when you say indigenous, you mean remote?
I'm thinking like the remote people. So I'm thinking the Panamanians. I'd call Panamanians. I would have thought. Yeah. Was there a lot of them on the side of the road, like looking at you and thinking, what are these idiots doing? And
they were
cheering you on.
Yeah, plenty of the locals were about, and I think a few stopped and asked questions about what we were doing. I remember one lady in particular stopped me. She had a tap out. We were in a kind of farming community, so weren't near anything. She offered me some water from her garden tap. She was just standing on her end of her driveway. She spoke perfect English, which was, I think, quite rare. And the reason she stuck in my mind was because she said that I reminded her of her son, which was quite brought a few laughs to the group I was with at the time. So there were a few. They're all interested in what we were doing, and a lot of them were kind of. I remember another interesting character before I let Ollie take over on his experiences with people. There was a guy who had a parrot on his shoulder, stood out on the street with his family, and Vicky, who happens to speak Spanish, explained what we were doing. We were running to kind of the area of Volcan, and then we were carrying on to the Sanguinola River, and he exclaimed, "That's impossible. You can't go that way." So we kind of carried on and said, well, we are doing it. That's what we are doing.
The locals are saying no, but yeah, we can do it.
Yes, there's no established routes that, before Jim and the recce crew went and made one, there was no route from coast to coast. So no one I guess there's a good reason no one thought it was possible.
Wow. What about you, Ola? Did you bump into any characters on the way?
To be honest, no, because my Spanish is so limited. It's like, hola, ¿cómo estás? Then they'll hit me with something else. I'm like, bye. So I'm like, I can't really get much further than hello, how are you? So again, I think that's something that, the only thing I probably would have changed about the whole experience is learning a bit more Spanish. So I could have chatted a bit more. And I'd had the fear of God put into me about like every dog in Panama had rabies and was going to bite me. So as you're running along, every single house seems to have a dog. Yeah. And they're all barking at you and they're all coming up to you, just sort of defend it. And normally I'd just be like, I'll calm the dog down, get stroking it, get it, liking me or whatever. But I was just trying to get as far away from the things as I possibly could, because I just, it had been such a long time coming, this challenge, and actually doing it. The last thing I wanted was getting taken out on the first day by a rabid dog before I even got into the jungle. So I was just, so yeah, that's as far as it went. Couldn't speak any Spanish, got away from the dogs as far as possible.
And you had the rabies shot. I didn't even have the rabies shot. So if you were keeping a 10-meter distance, I was going 20. I was
really.
Yeah, that's how, and I love dogs.
Wow. Day 2 finishes then, 2 marathons under your belt, 50 miles, half the distance of potentially what you've got to go on foot. How are you feeling at this point? Because next, what's coming up for our listeners, we've got like 5-6 days in the jungle. How are you feeling at this point?
Go on, you go first this time, Ollie.
I was feeling terrible. I was feeling absolutely trash. Because I'd pushed the marathon at the end, because I knew that I was going to be all out team as soon as we're in the jungle. So I was having a little bit of fun with Lawrence and Sarah and sort of just to sort of try and stay in front and just enjoying racing for want of a better word. But I also knew, because it had been told to us many times, that the hotel that we were staying at on night 2 was Mount Tutumas, which is a really beautiful protected acre of I can't remember that, but protected area of land up in the mountains, where you've got all this different flora and fauna and dozens or hundreds even of different birds and animal species up there, and I just wanted to get up there because I've been told it's amazing. And they have this whole hummingbird wall where they've got this wall where just you can sit there and watch the hummingbirds for ages, and they had waterfalls and just amazing views. And I was just like, I just really want to get up there. And also I was worried about not having my bag properly packed for the jungle. But when we got there, a beer was put into my hand and I started looking around. And then before you know it, I had another beer. And then before you know it, we were at the briefing. And then before you know it, I'm at bed and I'm dehydrated. I've got heat stroke. I've got diarrhea and everything's going wrong. And I'm like, right, go to bed and you'll feel all right in the morning. Stomach cramps all night. And I was just like, oh no, I've balls this up, haven't I? I've Billy Big Balls that on day 2, and now I've like booted myself out. I can't even get into the jungle. So I was feeling very sorry for myself, a little bit apprehensive, like hoping like, okay, I'm just gonna sip on this bladder and just hope that this goes away. And so that's where I was. I think Dan was in a much better place because he actually made it to breakfast. I didn't even make it to breakfast on the first day of the jungle. Yeah. How are you feeling, Dan?
Well, it's a bit of foreshadowing, like you said, for what is to come, that before you know it, it's dinner and bed and up again in the morning. Like there was kind of a preview of what's to come in the next week. But I remember, coming into Los Tortumas, and I was greeted by showered, warm and dressed Sarah, give me a big hug at the top of the hill. which was nice, just walking in with somebody. Yeah, again, and a beer was put into my hand, and I was on the deck kind of watching the sunset over the mountains in the clouds. So I think closest thing to paradise you could really find, with the hummingbirds around, and it was really, really stunning. And just before taking on that last final really steep push, there was some hot springs at the base of that hill as well, which only a few of us, I think, got the privilege of dipping in. So I had a little hot foot bath before I got up there as well. So that was great. But yeah, to come back to the point of how I was feeling, didn't really get a time to kind of process how I was feeling. I had a beer, I had a shower, I got my kit laid out for tomorrow, and then it was dinner time and briefing, and it's dark. So yeah, I think that about summarizes that. Getting a text message from Oli at midnight saying, "Are you cold? Because I'm freezing."
And that was a heat stroke, I guess, Oli.
Yeah. I was shivering. It was not a good place to be, and I was just really hoping that my body would self-regulate in good time.
Wow. Was you a little bit frightened that maybe you were going to get pulled out for medical reasons? Was it?
Oh yeah, 100%. That was the whole thing throughout the whole challenge. Was okay. First of all, I'm going to get bitten by a dog, so I'm going to get pulled out. Yeah. Now I've got heat stroke, so I'm going to get pulled out. Then it was when we got into the deep jungle, I'm going to be eaten by a snake, a spider, or whatever takes fancy. So I'm going to get pulled out. And I think that's what it was until about day 2 of the jungle. I actually managed to get to a bit of a turning point, really.
You get a bit of security, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit, Alan, because for the benefit of anyone that's considering doing this event or similar with Rat Race, you get so hyper fixated. If you've read any of Jim's kind of published materials on this, on how many, like last year's dropout rate, I think they started with 33 and ended with 18 or something like that. Yeah. And I think we all became a little bit hyper fixated on what were the medics looking at. We got to try and keep a good brave face on and act hard and like you're in good shape and tip top, because you all had a little niggling doubt in the back of your mind that you're going to fail some kind of subliminal test, and they're not going to let you carry on into the jungle. But to their credit, Jim made very clear, and the rest of the team, they're not there to stop you from doing anything. They want you to get through it. Like absolutely. I think they took it as a kind of personal goal to get everybody through in as good shape as possible. So they wanted you to kind of be open. They were always asking how are you feeling, you got enough water, you're taking on salt, so you're eating enough, and it was just constantly checking up, and you kind of eventually became reassured, like these guys are not there to pull you out, they're there to get you through. So I think that's a good point. For anyone that wants to do it, don't get hyper fixated that you're gonna be pulled out, but just be real with the guys. If you're struggling with something, say it. They're there, they'll patch you up, they'll get you on. So
yeah, the reality is that the chance of that there is a risk, but the real risk of the challenge, which does get drilled into you, and it's just about taking it seriously, is not a snake, a scorpion, or a spider. And I know that's obviously the fear from either sort of instinct or horror films or whatever it might be. That what's going to take you out the jungle is bad personal management, and that's going to be in the form of not looking after your feet, not taking on enough hydration, or eating food with dirty hands. Those are your big 3 risks of not completing the challenge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Not the animals.
You just touched on the team there. How many was there in the Rat Race team? Just out of interest, was they 1-1 or
you had 2-1? Jim and Abby, who were kind of the expedition leaders. So Jim, obviously, the big dog, head honcho, and Abby, and then you had Laura, who was administration, but kind of more than administration. She was
like head of operations.
Yeah, like operations. So she didn't go. she didn't kind of take part. She didn't run or walk. She was there at every key point, organizing like where we're staying, all of the trackers, all of the food, all of the water, and she was kind of like the outside, like the satellite, I think is a good way to describe her. She kind of orbited the group to make sure that there was always everyone had communications and things sorted. And then there were two medics, John and Steve, and Rick, who was kind of the Panama local English and Spanish speaker, so kind of like the mesh and a major jungle expert as well. So he's kind of like a keystone of the whole thing. We had James, the photographer, more than just a photographer, but that's what he was there to do. And then Oli and Dovey were the water guides. I think that's everyone that was kind of...
Abby, head of expeditions.
Yeah. Yeah, I said Abby, at the beginning.
Yeah. I don't... It's pretty much one by one, isn't it? Sounds like about 12, 13 people. And there were...
That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of their... 9 UK-based, UK Panama-based guys. And then we had 4 local jungle... 4 guys who were from a village near in Bocas del Toro, near the finish, who were there for just the jungle stage. So it was more or less 1 for 1 if you include those guys.
So the following day we're into the jungle. We're going into the jungle. This is the time where men become men, and busters like myself go back home. I'm just not convinced I could do this next part, but tell me about it. What was it like in was it 6 days you were in there in total? What's you done?
Yeah, 5.5 days. I think it would have been 5. The itinerary was kind of changed on the fly to match the pace of the people that we had in the group. But yeah, 5.5 days. Day 1, like Oli touched on earlier, we were kind of a bit more free form. What they said when we started was there's going to be an envelope. So there's 2 people at the front and there's 2 people at the back, and you can be anywhere you want to in between. And I think the first, I'm going to glaze over all that happened in between, which was lots of mud, rain and hills. But the first kind of group of people to hit the camp came in about, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes before the rest, basically. So it kind of split into two halves. And then I think after that, they decided, you know what, we're so close of a group, there's no point in doing the envelope anymore. We're just going to stick together. So in terms of kind of formation from then on, that's how that went. What else did you want to know about day 1?
I want to know about the hills and the mud and the rain and the water.
Yeah, so I think day 1 was 1,000-ish meters of ascent. The track was still a recognizable track at this point. It was walked by nearby villagers and farmers and used for things like herding cattle and horses and things into the local pastures. That it's kind of like the typical terrain that you would imagine from any jungle film at this point. It started to get really lush and green and rocky, and there's twisted roots and moss everywhere and vines, like you're in a Predator movie, through and through at that point. And it's like, yes, this is what I came here for. Your feet are only just starting to get wet. There was a bit of a downpour in the middle of the day, but from day 1, I don't remember feeling particularly. I felt good, revitalized on that day 1.
What about you, Oli?
Well, I was feeling like crap for half of it, so it didn't really it didn't really exist. And then just the fact that I managed to not shit myself, throw up, and actually managed to get like a little cacao bar or whatever it is down me. I actually felt amazing by like midday to know that, okay, I'm going to make it to the end of this day. So I started enjoying myself after about halfway, and we did actually come in on that bit. We had some really cool bits of I don't know, it was great. We got the professional photos through today, and it was really good looking through it. Just like, remember that. But we went down these really cool, like they were like just really high walled
Gully.
Yeah, and it was just green, and it was I don't know if anyone's seen pictures of Ludge Church. It's somewhere I've always wanted to visit, Ludge Church, but or it was like something out the David Bowie film Labyrinth or something like that. We're just going down these really, yeah, it was just these really high walled green arching corridors basically, and it was really just never been anything like that before, but it was still quite open. Like Dan said, it still felt that we were in touch to some extent with the outside world, because we'd encounter, someone coming by with a few cows, or with a few dogs every now and then. So it still kind of felt fairly safe and friendly at this point, at like low risk basically, or lower risk.
Yeah, this is a jungle. You've done 2 days on the road with heat. This is a rainforest. What was the humidity like in there?
Much better. Yeah, it's hot in the sun. Actually, everyone was really cold on the first night of the jungle. But I thought the heat was all right on the first day. Like once you're under the canopy, once you're under the shade, and particularly when it rained as well, it's not too bad. It's hot when you're exposed, and you're not really that exposed in the jungle.
Yeah, right. I'd agree. I expected it to be much more like a sauna. In fact, I got some sauna training in. I'd never been in a sauna before, but I thought I better see what it's like in case that's what it is like in the jungle. But it was much more mild than I was expecting when you were in the canopy, like Oli says. But when you come out into the sun, you kind of wanted to come out to see where you were, because you were high up in the mountains and the views were stunning, but you're also like, it's going to be so hot again. So yeah, kind of being in the jungle was a bit of a relief, not nearly as muggy as I was expecting.
So over the 5 days in there, Dan, what was the highlights for you?
5 days
in the jungle, just in the jungle, before we get to the rafting section.
Sure. I'm going to take a pause, Alan, because I've gone over this point in my head lots of times, and I can't come up with one answer. Like the best thing was the camaraderie, the being around people that are going through the same thing, and the kind of joint positivity that you'll kind of create together was a really, the most lasting thing in my mind. If you want a more tangible answer about features and things that we saw, going through that village on, I think, was it day 4? Day 4. And we'd been out of contact with any person other than who we were traveling with for a good few days at that point. So kind of coming to see something that was man-made again was kind of a, I don't know, I don't have a word to describe it. You just kind of feel like reunited again a little bit with people. And it was so interesting to see how they lived, the buildings that they had. So that was a high point, and, interacting with those guys a bit. And I can't really pinpoint one other thing, because it's really 6 days of looking at your feet, or the feet of the people in front of you, and just mud and roots and rocks every day for 10, 12, 13 hours a day. So sad as that's going to seem, and not a glowing kind of endorsement for, you won't find that bit in the marketing material, let's say. But yeah, the whole thing wraps into one as just a big, joint experience. So yeah.
Before I ask you the same question, Ollie, you talked earlier on about the mental strength of doing laps. You've now got to have the mental strength of spending this amount of time in the jungle. And as Dan just said there, staring at your feet for 10 hours a day. What was this mentally like for you?
Well, it's strange because I work a lot with data with myself and my clients. So when we're told that, okay, we've done a 40 whatever, because it wasn't exact marathons, but 40 whatever kilometers on day 1 and day 2. Now we're going to be doing 16 kilometers. You're like, okay, well, it's going to take, however many hours, but you don't expect 16 kilometers to take 12 hours. You just don't. You just can't comprehend. And after a while, you say to Jim, like, who's the CEO, how that you realize there's no point in asking how far is it today. You start asking how many hours is it today, because distance is irrelevant. And it is hard work. It is really, really hard work. So although we've talked a little bit about other elements of it, you do, if you are thinking about it, do be prepared that you will be spending 10 to 12 hours a day climbing uphill in very sticky, slippy mud. You're going to be just slipping everywhere all the time. It is hard going, and and that was what I love. That was what I love. It to come back to that point, and I think there was on day 3, it might have been day 2 actually, where I'd now crossed a bit of a personal threshold in terms of a multi-day event where I'd never done more than, I think the closest I could say to doing multiple things on one day might be Fandance Trinity. I'm not sure. But there was a point where I was like, damn, this is tough, you know. It's another hill. We've been going up for hours. It's muddy. It's hard to get a foothold. I keep slipping. I'm worried that I'm going to snap my ankle or my knee. And you start to go a little bit inward, but then you look around and you see someone like Ian, who we haven't mentioned yet, 59. And he's still there. He's doing his thing. He's going through it with you. And you just look around and you think, you know what? They're doing it. There's no reason why you can't as well. And then once I got over that little bit of a mental stumbling block, it became so much easier, and you accept the situation, and you feel then from going like, I'm not sure if I can do another day, to feeling that I could do this for a week, providing I had enough food and clean water.
You just get up and do it.
Yeah. It becomes a military operation then.
Yeah,
you know what you have to do.
Couldn't echo more what Oli touched on there. It was just non-stop hard work, and you kind of zone into that. You get up, you get dressed, you walk until Rick blows the whistle, then you breathe for 5 minutes, and then you walk again. And yeah, the mud was a great leveler. It put us all in the same, boat. It doesn't matter how that Oli finished the second day first. You can't beat the mud, and that was just non-stop. Like, remember Mike falling over, like it seemed like every 5 minutes, like as it really grips onto you and wants to keep you there. So not only are you walking up a mountain that's like the equivalent of Ben Nevis or something, you're kind of doing one step forward and one step back. Anyway, so yeah, can't oversay the mud a bit.
Apart from the mud, there must have been some funny moments out there. Ollie, what was there anything out there that you really remember that was funny? Or
well, I mean, I have to say, like, Mike was probably my favorite guy out there because he did fall on his ass. We're probably, there's a good chance we're potentially getting close to triple figures. I'm not sure, but it was several times out. But he took it with such good grace. Like, he didn't let it psychologically let him think, oh, I'm never getting out of the jungle, or I hate this experience. He just got back up, and when it happened again, it happened again. And that's what a lot of it is about, is stuff's going to happen that's going to be rubbish, but you keep going, you get through it. Like, I think probably the worst ritual of the morning, because it becomes very, very ritualistic. Your morning and your evening, how you go to bed. You go in, everyone's got their own little ritual. What order you do stuff in, where do you put stuff, how do you hang it? And that was the really interesting thing, because that developed over the week, particularly if you've never done it before. Some people like Briony, who was a bit of an expedition badass, had really good ways of doing everything, and you can learn from people. And I certainly learned a lot and changed my setup throughout the week. But the worst part, see if Dan agrees with me.
I know what you're going to say already.
It was putting on the same wet, stinking clothes every goddamn morning, because it was just gross. It was just gross, but had to do it, because there's no point in taking up food space, volume, or even extra weight by having like dry clothes for every day. Some people had a dry shirt after, I think, 2 or 3 days, but at the end of the day, it's going to be getting wet and smelly within a few hours of muddy hill climbing anyway. So
true.
the advice I got from Luke was just put the same shirt on, and it's just horrible. But once it's on, it's on.
Yeah, it's true. You'd be amazed how quickly you get used to that. Like you'd crave just a dry pair of socks. But as soon as you put the socks in the boots anyway, they're wet and cold, but you walk for 5 minutes and it's just like you've picked up where you left off yesterday. But that does remind me, Alan, of a highlight. There were a couple of times where we'd come down off the mountains to the riverbed. So there were a couple of nights when we had the opportunity to have a midnight bathe in a river. So that was definitely one of the highlights. So I think on day 3, got to camp, put up the stuff, and then hiked down to the river, and just jumped in with all the dirty clothes, got it all rinsed off, got my camping soap, and just had a good bath, and that just felt really, again, revitalizing. So definitely that was a high point.
That sounds cool. Having a bath in an open river. Now that's my type of thing. That's what I.
That's something to go for. Yeah, bang in the middle of the Panamanian jungle, like
a bit of wild swimming.
Yeah, it was great.
I'm hoping the photographer's got pictures of this bathing thing. When you've just said earlier on, you got the pack for today. There are pictures of this.
There are a few. Oh. There are a few of the second time we got to go into the river, because that first time, by the time we got to the river, it was dark, so there was no photos. But the second time, there's a few photos of us having a wash in the river.
Awesome. Last section then, we have got, as they call it looks like canoes to me, stroke paddleboards, but they call it pack raft. So I'm presuming this is because they're inflatable rafts. Is that right?
It's because they're carryable. And you can fit them in a pack, and apparently they're fairly new by river rafting standards. The guys were saying to me they haven't actually been around that long, but there's some sort of really robust material that can take a right beating, doesn't rip when it bounces off rocks, and is easy enough to sort of just transport around.
Yeah, but if you could visualize like those little rubber dinghies you'd get on the beach as a kid, they kind of look like a pro version of one of those, just kind of, a boat-shaped inflatable ring that you sit in. And I did the raft skills day that Rat Race put on, and immediately went out and bought one because they're so much fun and hard to flip over, really, unless you're on some really white water. So. Yeah, that's those.
I've seen the video on their website, and it does look like there was white water, bit of white water rafting as you were going down. How bad was that?
Yeah, there were a few fun bits. On that first evening, for sure. I got turned over once on a rock, so I'm not a professional or anything, but I got flipped pretty easily on that first day.
What about you, Oli? Was you getting wet in?
No, I stayed on. I didn't get flipped. I just really enjoyed it. I just wanted more of it, to be honest. It was really good fun, and but it was actually quite short lived, because we started off with like a couple of rapids. They got progressively harder. Then we hit this really big one. We were told it was like a grade 3 or something, but then pretty shortly after that, we kind of hit a bit more open water. It got a little bit less. It got a lot more open, and we just didn't get any more rapids, and we were kind of like, no, they're all back there. So then it was just actually like a lot of arm work, really, and not much to carry you. So but I did try and challenge my own fears at points, because I was told there were crocodiles in the river, so I did just jump in just to see if I could dare myself to do it.
I wasn't told there were crocodiles in it until the end, so
I think from my understanding of a bit of wildlife, they're not like the crocodiles that we see in Australia and that. They're a little bit smaller, aren't they? But they're still quite dangerous.
Cayman. I think we saw one.
We did see one.
Yeah, I saw one. So I didn't know to be aware, to be honest. I was in and out of the water quite a bit just to cool off. It was just... No. At that point, it was just nice to kind of rest your feet and chill. And we split into 2 groups at this point, one led by Oli and one led by Dovey.
Different Oli.
Yeah, another Oli. Yeah.
Another Oli.
Raft Oli.
And Oli was just super laid back and just wanted to get us all through it safely. And I just felt so like chilled out. The sun was setting, it was kind of dusky, and we went through all of these like tribal villages, which I just remember thinking like, this is like what they come to shoot film footage here, because it was just so perfect. Hard to describe how awesome it felt on that first day of rafting.
Yeah, and it was great because the kids all ran down to watch, you know, the crazy tourists do the White Rapids, and you know, apparently they all cheer if you go over. But
we're all there with our helmets with these fancy pack rafts, and then there's just these kids with like planks of wood just diving about in the same rapids, just like having a great time.
Yeah, this one kid basically had like just a log as a surfboard. He was brilliant. So cool little kid.
Diving under us and all sorts, making us look right fools, really.
That was I've got to see a picture of a young lad on a log now surfing the rapids. That would be amazing.
See if there's one.
While you're in the water, though, aren't there piranhas in Panama? Am I right in thinking there's piranhas in Panama? I know it's South America. I know they're indigenous to South America, so maybe it wasn't so much the crocodiles you had to have been worried about. It maybe was something else.
I'm pleased I was ignorant of it if they were there.
Yeah, same. I don't need anything else to worry about.
Yeah.
So, finish line. Now, you all stayed together through the jungle, and if Oli was leading after a marathon, am I guessing that Oli was crowned the winner? Was there crowning of it?
There was the crowning of it, and finish line is a bit of a fun story to tell from me and Oli. I would like to hear it from your perspective, Oli, actually.
Well, we got to the last 2 kilometers of the pack rafting, and then they basically said, right, it's a race to the finish now. And I have to say, Dan is very good. Dan is very good at rowing, and he took off, and I couldn't catch up with him. I mean, I was probably couldn't catch up and overtake him, so I was having to sit probably at about 30 to 50 meters behind him constantly for about a whole kilometer. Like, he took off, and I was trying really, really hard to sort of keep up with him. And he did just start to tire a little bit, somewhere between 1.1 kilometer to 1.5 kilometer. Managed to just sneak past him and held the lead for that final 500 meters. But I nearly ballsed it up because I thought when we got to the shore where the finish line was, it was going to be really shallow. So I jumped out into the water and just basically pretty much drowned. And Dan's coming storming in behind me, and I'm like, and then I try and get over the line, and they're like, no, you've got to take your boat as well. So we've actually got I'm ahead by we're pretty much crossing the finish line together. It's a good little photo. We just saw it today, but
you can see.
It's good to finish finish the race with the guy that basically, I was cursing at certain times.
Making
throughout the early days of the jungle, and certainly when I was doing another Amazon purchase for another bit of mandatory kit that I'll never use again. Dan's name was a curse word. But it was great. It was great to finish an awesome experience with him. So thanks, Dan.
Yeah, we stumbled across the line pretty much together. So it was a great symbolic finish.
Oh, that's amazing. That's going to be worth it. On before I let you go, are you going to be booking another one?
100%. Yeah, I already know which ones.
Oli, have you got the list that Dan's booking you on?
But potentially, I think he's probably going to go for the big 3. I'm guessing, because I heard him talk about it, what the big 3 is, and I think that idea is interesting. I think their big 3 for those who are listening along is I think you might have mentioned it already, is Panama, which is obviously jungle, Mongol 100, which is, freezing conditions, and Race the Wreck, which is desert conditions. So it's kind of like those 3, completely different hostile environments to experience.
Yeah. And Dominica, tip to toe, which Oli mentioned, is also on the list because that's where my family is from originally. So my great grandparents moved over here from Dominica. So I've never been back, And I think it will be quite an interesting way to experience it for the first time, traversing the whole country. So yeah, Dominica tip to toe is on the list for 2025. I think is the next time I can get there.
Awesome. Guys, thank you for joining me. Before I let you go, I always give all my guests a chance to give shout outs to anyone they want to give shout outs and thanks to. I'm going to come to you first, Ollie. Give me a shout out or thanks to anyone you want to. The clock is yours, as they say.
Just a quick one then. I'll give a shout out to Rumble, but also big shout out to Cliff Lakes, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have met Dan. I wouldn't have done half the stuff I've done in obstacle racing, and yeah, definitely this whole thing wouldn't have happened without them.
And where can people find you? Instagram?
Oli Fit PT or Oliver Blake Fitness for my business one, but for most of the sort of my own racing, it's Oli Fit PT, which is OLI.
Fantastic. Dan, the floor's yours.
Okay, well, I definitely have to thank my own PT, Rich J. Clark, for conditioning me for the last 6 years and keeping me in tip-top condition to do that. I would echo what Ollie said with Cliff Lakes. Paul and for starting that up, and then moving on to Griff and Tress for keeping that going and always providing a supportive training environment for that. And then last but definitely not least, Dad for the inspiration to just keep going with everything.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I know your Instagram's private. If people send you friend requests, because I'm going to send you one shortly, Dan, would you accept them so we can see what you get up to next?
Yeah, I don't keep Instagram updated that much. Like I said, I'm a bit of a technophobe in that area, but it's Dan Hiscoke Design. So you'll think I'm into running, but really it's designy stuff. That's my main bag. So Dan Hiscoke Design on Instagram, and just Daniel Hiscoke. It's a pretty unique name, so just Google that.
Dan takes a good photo. To be fair to him, he does do some really good photos. He's got a good creative side to him.
Yeah, I'm no James, but yeah.
Was it James Appleton who took the photos?
Yes, it was James.
It was the very same.
Oh wow, that must have been pretty good being out there with him himself, because he's you said 2014 you joined OCR, Dan, and that was you about the same time, Ollie, or was you before that?
2016-17, but it took me a while to twig, because I've seen, as a few people may have, the Sufferfest documentary.
Yep.
And he's featured in that for winning Tough Guy. And it just took me a long time. I was like, where do I know his face from? And then we got talking about OCR, and it finally took. But yeah, he's an absolute legend in the game, isn't he?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. In the early 20s, he was 2010s, and that he was right at the top of the game. It was when he turned up with John Alban, it was literally neck and neck all the way through. Great runner.
Yeah, and to see that in operation, like he did everything that we did with a camera bag and all his gear. So we haven't mentioned him enough. He's a machine. Yeah. And not only that, is he's such a nice guy and such a supportive member of the team. Like he was coming around and checking on us and making it look like a breeze. But he was an absolute legend.
Nicknamed him Ninja. I nicknamed him Legolas, because we're all there like trying to struggle through the mud, looking like a man walking on the moon, and he's just on top of it, just going literally running full pelt, trying to get in front of us, and the mud wasn't anything. I don't know how he did it. No. But yeah, he's a machine and a great guy.
Mud wizard.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to that little podcast there that me, Ollie and Dan made. It could have gone on for ages. It was a long podcast anyway, but it could have gone on for ages. I am going to let you guys and girls get off. I'm going to let you do whatever you have got planned for the rest of the day. If you're listening to a morning, or the evening, if you're listening to this bit on your evening run. And in the meantime, you all take care. You stay safe. I love you all. Speak soon. Bye.
Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall. My love, if you feel like I do right now, fight, but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose. You want. Let's have a bit of fun till our downfall. My love, if you feel like I do right now, don't say you're on the run to the other side. My love,